Introduce the first speaker for the day, Dr. Vishal Bansal. Dr. Vishal Bansal is a clinical pharmacologist and he's the group head quality for IV Hospitals Punjab. And he would be taking the first session for today, that is pharmaceutical supply chain management. Welcome, sir. Please start.
Good afternoon, all of you. And first of all, I would like to thank Kaho and the Ruby Hall Clinic and all the participants for giving me an opportunity to present something which I personally say is often less understood and often ignored concept. My job was made easy when it was told that what all will be the concepts we are going to talk about for the day. But this is one thing which is often not considered when we are talking about the safety of the medications. How the things will take shape, what is the pharmaceutical supply chain, we will be talking about this. The best practices may not be there, but still the idea of this presentation will be to give all the participants some leads how we can really manage the medications. The presentation will continue with the following headings and the topics, right from the definition to vendor selection, procurement and all the stuff. Coming off the definition, the supply chain management. When we talk about the supply chain management, it is amalgamation of all the key business processes which help to generate value for the customers and its stakeholders. And it will include everyone. It will include the supplier, the intermediaries, the customers. It includes the logistic activities to sales, to finance and IT. Ultimately, the benefit is to both the hospital as well as the customer. In brief, if we see the supply chain, it includes the processes right from the manufacturer to a distributor who can directly provide it to the hospital or pharmacy going to the patient, or there may be sub-distributors. The final benefits will be a quicker customer response and fulfillment rates of the pharmacy, a good lead time, greater productivity and lower costs, and definitely an inventory management which will be helpful to both the parties. Now, why is it important? There will be few issues which are really important when we are trying to look into the supply chain. Counterfeit drugs, the cross-contamination, labeling issues, the storage issues at the level of warehouse, the transport issues, the lead time, and definitely something about the poor quality of the raw material. So these are the things which are the ones which can lead to maybe at some stage the failure of the treatment. The way we try to put across at some stages, all the patients who are coming to the hospital will be in the need of medicines. And when we talk about the medicines, we talk about the supply from the hospital, the pharmaceutical supply chain becomes important. So what are the criteria for a good pharmaceutical supply chain? Is it an authorized company? Is it authorized by the company? So we are talking about the vendor selection criteria from whom we are going to procure the medicine. There have been instances where a patient has talked about the failure of a response or a counterfeit medicine, where the company has denied by saying the drug was not procured from the authorized vendor. So if a drug has not been procured from the authorized vendor, the company says, I am not liable from where you are getting the drug. My authorized vendor ensures a lot of things. So make sure we try to get the drugs from the authorized vendor. And we should also be looking at the licenses. Is the company, is the vendor having both the retail and the bulk licenses? Quotations, qualified pharmacists, a good storage facility with a range of brands, and maintenance of the storage facilities and cold chain as per the manufacturer's instructions are going to be something which a vendor has to comply with. Then a lead time, the return policy, compliance to your purchase order. You are requesting 100 supply of 100 products, but it is able to provide you only 20. Doesn't really fit well. Return policy, you are having as per NAB, and some of the people will be having 1 month, 3 months, 6 months return policy. Is your vendor able to look into it? And definitely the finance department is going to be really interested about the credit policy, which can be depending on the organization, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. The vendor should be open for various audits and surveillance that will show the openness and the quality the vendor is going to maintain. So a vendor can be evaluated on various criteria. One simple format can be, once you've already selected it, we can always rate the vendor. It can be in terms of price, in terms of delivery, in terms of quality, the payment terms, services, and all those things. And this form can really come handy when we're saying that we are reviewing the vendor for its renew for the next year or 2 years, depending on the policy. Now, when we talk about the next step, that is a procurement. So you have selected the vendor, you're going for the procurement. We have often seen, since all of us, most of us will be from the accredited organizations, we look forward for some drug procurement principles. Again, as I started with my initial wording, that this is not something I can always say that this is something which is foolproof, but over a period of a decade or something working,
this gives us a fair good idea how we can work it out. The drugs, when we are going to procure, it can be a formulary drug, it can be a non-formulary. It is very easy if it's a formulary drug from an authorized vendor against a purchase order, routine bulk purchase. It is very simple. You put across a PO, you go ahead and you buy the drug. The organizations need to look into the other criteria for drug procurement, which can be non-formulary, non-authorized, emergency purchase, new drugs, new requests, and definitely, I always talk about one aspect. Are you having the license to purchase and sell the drugs? We will be talking about these licenses a bit later in the presentation. So if you don't have a license, please do not get into buying or selling the drug for the patient. Storage. Storage is primarily dependent on the manufacturing guidelines. You have received the drugs, you want to store the drugs, you should know some of the storage principles. Pharmacy, when we're talking about a pharmacy, the temperature is usually good to be below 25 degrees centigrade. Most of the formulations at room temperature are said to be at 25 degrees centigrade or less, or a refrigerated medication or a deep freezer medication. Do ensure that there is a circulation space all around your storage spaces. It can be the roof, it can be the floor. A good storage space is always going to be helpful for adequate maintenance of the temperature and humidity in the different areas. Storage of hazardous chemicals, maybe the best practices can be done in a hazardous cabinet. Not very, it's a costly, safe. So other
aspects which can be at the level where they do not fall on the person, availability of MSDS can really come handy to the pharmacy staff. Little bit about the last and high risk storage should be done. Fast moving, slow moving, and non-moving always takes importance when we're storing the drugs, because that is how our dispensing is going to be. The labeling, the boxes, and the availability and the alphabetical, the consumables, implants. Now, an important aspect is the storage of the near expiry, the mutilated, or the strips which you don't want to dispense. Please do ensure they are not stored at the same level where you are putting across the dispensing medications. They should be stored separately. Vaccines have got a requirement. The most important requirement is the maintenance of a cold chain. This is a very good resource from CDC, which talks about the vaccine storage, how it has to be stored in the refrigerator, the labeling aspect, the storage at different compartments, the keeping of the bottles in the different areas so that the temperature loss is not there. So we can maintain a good vaccine storage with this handbook, which it's a freely downloadable stuff. Drug formulary is something based upon which a pharmaceutical supply chain will be really coming across handy. Now, it has to be revised. It is a revised compilation of drugs approved by PTC. It guides the clinicians. It is dependent upon the NLEM and WHO essential list. Formulary should be dynamic. It cannot be a static formulary that you cannot change. You should be revising it, but there can be a frequency, which can be a quarter, which can be 6 months or a 1 year. Especially in a multi-specialty hospitals where a lot of consultants join, new specialties and new branches come up, the drug formulary definitely should be a dynamic one. Multiple formats across are available. I find that this format usually takes care of the requirements of the pharmacy, of the clinician, as well as the administrator. A formulary can be with the salt name, what all formulations which are available, injectable, tablet, syrups, the various doses and strengths that are available, the brands. Now, this is a column which will be highly interesting or important for the clinician. They're always looking at the brands, the companies. And at some level, definitely, they're also looking at the MRP because that is the price on which most of them are selling. We cannot keep on increasing the brands. There will be a drug which will be having 3 strengths, which will be available across 4 brands. So that will be really a cost intensive for the organization, and it will lead to dead inventory. And it will also lead to more expiry. It will also lead to mismanagement at different levels. So preferably the number of brands can always be restricted depending upon the financials of the organization. Variations are there, which can be a system-based formulary, a classification. Some of the bigger hospitals, they're having multiple departments, and each department's requirement, they make their own formulary. So all these are acceptable formats that we are trying to look into. The processes can be defined. It's always good to involve a clinician whenever we are trying to go ahead with a new drug formulary request. Ultimately, they are the prescribers. So we have to come to a balance between a pharmacist, the purchase, and the clinician so that we come up with the best thing. It is always advisable that we go ahead with the drugs only after approval through a PTC committee or an authorized person, and then only we add it up. Implants and medical devices, they have their own regulations. Briefly, we talk about definitely the storage of the most of these things are at routine pharmacy levels. The procurement principles are definitely based upon the they can be clear depending upon the intensity at which they are applied on the body or piercing into the body cavity or into the body. They are defined as class A, class B, class C, and class D. It's where we can, the things will be unending discussions, how we are trying to put across. Logistics and inventory management is another aspect which will help us to manage the pharmaceutical supply chain in a good way. We can have an ABC. ABC is usually based upon the principles of 10-20-70, usually software driven or Excel sheet based driven, and can be done easily. First in, first out, or first expiry, first out can be the one which is to be done. Fast, slow moving, non-moving items, vital, essential, desirable. Lead time analysis. Lead time analysis talks about the time a vendor will take to reach to you. If we are in a bigger city, if we are in a metros, usually the lead time may be as low as 1 to 2 days. You can order any product and it will come in no time. But in the periphery, the lead time may vary from 3 days, 7 days to even 15 days. So whenever we are trying to look into the reorder levels, let us do importantly look into the lead time analysis. We talk about the basic principle of the storage. This is one simple formula which we found quite handy, is that if we take up 3 monthly levels and out of which we come out with what's my monthly requirement. Let us say my monthly requirement of a particular product is 100 and my lead time is around 5 to 6 days. So I try to keep the product as the level between 25% to 125%. 125% was very important for me to maintain the inventory in my organization. What was happening is automatically it goes to 50, they will order 100 more. It goes to 70, oh, order is there, we place the order on, let us say, 29th or 30th of every month, they will order accordingly. So my upper limit was increasing. So we put across something that it should not increase 125%. 25% will give me 1 week of an extra stuff of a lead time, which in case goes wrong or an extra supply has to be taken care of, will do the same. In case you don't have the space, you can always put across a single order and the supply can be segregated. And this brings an important aspect, that is economic order quantity, EOQs. Most of you will be aware that is something EOQs talks about an ideal order size. I have to order something. The order can be placed on daily basis, the order can be placed on monthly basis, the order can be placed on 6 monthly basis. So each order will cost me something in terms of the manpower, receiving, the storage, and all those things. So I have to look into that. What is my best EOQs, economic order quantity, that we can really put forth. LASA. Oh, look like, sound like, multiple things, multiple issues, multiple solutions, a few successful and a lot may not be. But we keep on devising the ways. If my formulary is dynamic, my LASA list is also going to be dynamic. We have to be really sure if we are all updating our drug formulary, do look into that my new drug is also a part of the LASA if it is falling into that. We know that there are a few defined guidelines. They are not to be followed exactly as a rule, but yes, they help us to do something better. So ISMP talks about the Tolman letters which can be put across, but this is possible primarily when we are talking about the sound-like drugs, especially with a generic name. Most of the pharmacies are storing the drugs in the brand name. We can use the first capitalization letter, but we also have to try to look into different aspects how we can manage the stuff. They're space consuming, same drug, different strengths, different formulations. We all will be trying to look into. What can be done? Double check is something at all the levels, right from transcription to intent to dispense, administration and documentation. Some people start sending the drugs and keeping the drugs in colored envelopes. Some follow colored stickers on the tablets and formulations. Some go ahead to the marker writing with this thing. One small thing, when we started putting across some colored stickers and marker writing on the strips, we got some information from the regulators that this is with the tampering of the strips, do not do that. So we came up with something is that a colored envelope, which was acceptable to my pharmacist as well as to my nursing when they're receiving the drugs. A pinch of high-risk medications, a pinch that is anti-infectives, potassium and electrolytes, insulin, narcotics and sedatives, chemotherapy and heparin. So this is an acronym for routinely used high-risk medications, though a bigger list from ISMP is also available, which talks about nearly all these medications. And what we have to do, the most important aspect with all these high-risk medications is that we should be following the same double check policy at different levels. In fact, at some stage, we also say that all the LASA medicines are actually more or less high-risk medication because there is always a chance of medication error happening with the LASA medications. But yes, people do keep on doing something. Some will say look-alike will be in pink envelope, sound-like will be with red or blue marking, or high-risk will be some other marking. But at the end of the day, if we look at the principles, they all follow the same principles. That is the double check policy to be followed at all the levels, right from prescription transcription to the time that reaches the patient. So anything that falls well with the organization can be looked into as a policy. Coming to the last topic, that is going to be the Schedule X drugs. Here I'll be spending extra couple of minutes because there are a few things which I find that whenever we go around, people are not aware, though there will be small issues which is always subject to regulatory. We will not get into the debates, but let us quickly see the Schedule X drugs, and these are the ones which have a propensity to cause addiction if they are consumed for the long run. The drugs are to be given on prescription. They are to Schedule H, Schedule H1, Schedule X. All these drugs are supposed to be given on prescription. So Schedule X drugs are also to be given on prescription. Slight differences we will be seeing is that whenever we are prescribing and dispensing these drugs, we have to write that whether you want refill or no refill. The doctor must write that in case you're giving these drugs, no refill means you're giving it for 10 days, means 10 days. Similarly, pharmacy should also stamp all the dispensing, all the bills that it has been dispensed. On the prescription also you should be stamping that the drug has been dispensed for 10 days. You cannot, and here from the regulatory perspective, it becomes very important that you have to perhaps overrule your cut strip policy. If the drug is given for 7 days, your strip is for 10 days. You cannot say that I don't give a cut strip, because here cases have happened where a person was prescribed for 7 days, full strip was given, and that led to notification from the FDA that why this has happened. The details of the patient and other things are there. So if you look at this, okay, if you look at this, there is something which we see among the whole. Is this the
Schedule X list? The one drug that is really important in this whole is ketamine, which was introduced around 5 years back because of the propensity to cause some nefarious things with this drug. Drugs for swine flu were also there, but they are now being oseltamivir and zanamivir, but they were ultimately removed when actually it became really an endemic stuff.
Me, sir. So we will have to end quickly.
It will not take more than 2 minutes, madam. If you permit me, I will continue.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you. So this is the licenses I was talking about. The first three will be the retail licenses, 20, 21, and 20F for Schedule X. These are for the bulk licenses, that is B, B, and G. And these exclude C, C1X, exclude C1. Schedule H1 is primarily for the antibiotics and some of the sedative hypnotics. Schedule C was primarily for the parenteral as well as from ophthalmic preparations and some single-use devices. Schedule C1 was mainly for non-parenteral. So if you see 20 and 21 both go hand in hand, because without this you cannot be able to prescribe. A word about essential narcotic drugs, that is the most important drugs we are all having, that is morphine and fentanyl. So these come under the essential narcotic drugs. You need to have ND7, and these are some of the forms that we will be maintaining. There is always going to be a debate about the triple prescription, but it's always good that if all the prescriptions are available, then the records on the monthly and daily basis has to be maintained on different formats by the registered medical practitioner, authorized persons, the institute, as well as the daily account of the narcotic drugs should be maintained. Annual return has to be filed. One resource from which I partly looked into, and others are also there on the net. So if we try to look into this, the last slide for me today. So we all face a small issue from the pharmacy perspective that whether we can include a drug or not include a drug. So I came up with some of the things that how we can really say that whether we want to include the drug. It can be a proprietary brand, MNC's brand. What comes really good is to get the QA certificate of the drug from the company. All will be having GMP, all will be having some MOUs. But the QA certificate from an NABL lab really is something which only a good company will be having. So depending on the organization policy, a quality assurance certificate can be really coming across healthy in case you want to go for an acceptance of a drug. So at the end, I will say that the pharmaceutical supply chain is going to be one of the most important aspects at some stage of your patient treatment if you start looking at all these points, because it is finally the medicines that we're going to give to the patient. Thank you so much.